Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. So as we're practicing and studying the Buddha's teachings, I think it's helpful to keep in mind that the Buddha was teaching for 45 years, and he was teaching a great variety of people, different temperaments, different personalities, different aptitudes. So that on one hand, that the positive side of it is that in the Buddhist teachings we have a great range of different teachings, but at the same time, one has to be a little bit careful about where to approach it. Sometimes it can be, seem to be overwhelming because there's so many different teachings at different, pitch at different levels of understanding. It's hard for us sometimes to know which is suitable for us. But fortunately, the Buddha is a great teacher. He started off with the very basics. For example, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, starting off with the very basics of the teachings, and then for those who delve into it, go deeper into it, then it expands. We say the Four Noble Truths, but then you look into it, and then there's the first one, unsatisfactoriness. Then there's a refinement of that too. One word, unsatisfactoriness, but then, what is unsatisfactoriness? And then you remember from the chanting, jati piduka, birth is unsatisfactory, aging, death, in short, the 5 groups of grasping. So it starts off very, very simple, something we can all understand, I think. I don't know, maybe can we? Birth is unsatisfactory? Well, okay. I wasn't there. I guess I was, but I can't remember it. But then it gets more and more refined or more and more detailed at the 5 groups of grasping, the very fundamental functions of our life, bodily and mental functions, are unsatisfactory. This takes a lot more, of course, study and investigation and contemplation. But if we keep in mind that the Buddha is giving us these particular stages of practice, if you like. And I think even, it's my opinion, but I think when the Buddha was teaching, at the very beginning, he was a new teacher, so we had to keep it quite simple. And then as he taught and as he, you could say, contemplated deeper his own realization, he gained new insights. So sometimes the teachings become more and more refined or more and more elaborate, if you like, because the Buddha was also reflecting upon these basic teachings. And of course, the important part is that there's different ways that we learn about the teachings. There's the information about what the teachings are, but then most important is the practice itself. And when it comes to the practice, we have to also keep in mind that, many times the teachings are sort of in the right context. For example, I was contemplating about as I was the whole Vasa, the Eightfold Path, which was the theme of the Sutta studies, this Vasa. When the Buddha, first discourse the Buddha gave, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Buddha delineated the Eightfold Path, the 8 factors, starting off with right view, right aspiration, and then morality, and then the meditation practices. But then later on, can't say when, but later on, the Eightfold Path was designated into the 3 trainings: morality, meditation, wisdom. So, I mean, somewhere along the line, when you talk about the Eightfold Path, it begins with wisdom, actually, right view, right aspiration. But then later on, the wisdom part of it became at the end. Morality came first. Why was that? They only speculate. Nobody can second guess the Buddha, even though I might try sometimes. But but I think in the very beginning, when Buddha was first teaching, most of his early disciples were already ascetics. The 1,000 Mahatheradic ascetics, and even Sariputta Moggallana were ascetics of a different persuasion. They weren't Buddhist. So it was important. They already had, as an ascetic, they already had a very good foundation in morality and meditation. What they needed was right view. Sometimes all they needed was just a few words of the Buddha, right view from the Buddha, and then they were awakened like that, because they already had a good foundation of morality and meditation. Even though you can say maybe their meditation was not exactly Buddhist meditation, but they just needed the right view, the right words from the Buddha, the right understanding, how to apply their practice, and they were awakened. And then later, when the Buddha became more well-known and popular, he was mostly teaching lay people. So most of the lay people in general were not so developed in morality and meditation as the ascetics. So maybe the Buddha had to shift the emphasis a bit. But we still didn't change the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path still exists, but just change the emphasis a bit. So nowadays, people mostly talk about morality first when they talk about, spiritual practice, morality, at least the 5 precepts, and then maybe some meditation. And then it comes to the wisdom part of it. But maybe even in the process, when the Buddha first had his insights, he maybe wasn't so clear. I don't know if this is controversial. Wasn't so clear about the profundity of the wisdom. The Buddha's wisdom was really incredibly profound for the time. Most of the ascetics in the Buddha's time, they worshipped some deity, or they still had a belief in a self, in an Atman, some immortal soul or something. But then the Buddha, in his investigations, had a different perspective, saw things quite differently. And the tradition says, the Buddha had very, very profound meditation. If you remember the story of the Buddha, he first of all had these two teachers who taught him advanced meditation up to very, very high levels. The cessation of perception and feeling and perception. Yeah. And the Buddha seemingly they accomplished it quite easily, but he realized that wasn't the way to Nibbana. That was just a samadhi practice, concentration, collectedness practice. Wasn't enough insight in it. But even though it was a very, very advanced meditation, this was still a very good foundation in the Eightfold Path. Collectedness, samadhi, is a good foundation for wisdom, if used in the right way. For example, one of the factors of meditation in Buddhism, in the Eightfold Path, is right mindfulness. Right mindfulness is basically contemplating, right? Remember from the Course? Yeah? It's already a few months ago, you already forgotten. But it's a contemplation. Not only sama samadhi, right collectedness, but also samasati, right mindfulness. In mindfulness, the way to practice it is contemplation. Contemplation of the body, the feelings, the states of mind. So some people might wonder, well, how do you do contemplation and keep your mind still too, in concentration or collectedness? But it's a matter of finding the right balance. And mind needs to be silent, you can say, beyond conceptualizing, but not totally blank. There needs to be a level of clarity there, of awareness, of, we say, attentiveness, mindfulness, and the ability to be mindful or attentive to certain aspects of reality. For example, contemplating the arising factors and the passing away factors of the body, the feelings, the states of mind. So this, I think, was quite original, I think, in the Buddha's time, because most of the ascetics were very adept at collectedness or samadhi. That was a very, very strong emphasis in samadhi, as the Buddha practiced. But he had some, what would you say, barami, intuitive wisdom, that samadhi was not enough. Just having these samadhi, deep concentration experiences was not enough. One had to bring in some contemplation into it, investigation. And then, as the Buddha, I would say, he developed this contemplation, the ability to contemplate. Then we begin to recognize that, there's a lot of different aspects to the contemplation. Just being able to bring a bit of contemplation to the body, for example. As you contemplate the body, you say, okay, I'll be aware of the body. Focus my attention on one aspect of the body, like the breathing. But then if you now bring in this contemplation of observing the arising and passing away factors of breathing, there's a whole different perspective opens up. Arising and passing away. What are the arising and passing away factors of breathing? Don't start thinking. Don't think about it. You have to observe it. I mean, just one question out of that query is that who is breathing? If you're trying to observe the arising factors of breathing, well, what is breathing? Who is breathing, actually? Rather than just focus on breathing itself, the sensation of breath rising and passing away, as an object, you try and bring in some contemplation and what's the arising factors of breathing? Okay, there is air, right? That's one factor, but what's behind it? What's doing the breathing? There's air here all the time. Who's breathing it? It's breathing in here, though. You see, there's nobody out there. Maybe there is. Deva does or something breathing. I think in the old days they used to believe that the wind came from the gods. It must have been a wind god. When the wind blows, it's from a god or something. The gods are breathing on me. Now we realize it's just changes in air pressure and temperature and stuff like that. But when you're observing this within this body and contemplating the arising factors, well, there is that personal element, isn't there? Subjective element. Who's breathing? What's breathing? And maybe if you investigate that further, I won't give you the answer. You have to investigate that yourself. I'll give you a hint. What's breathing, not who's breathing. What's breathing? How about contemplating the arising factors of feelings? Rising and passing away factors of feelings. Not only we can recognize what feelings are, we're aware of them, but trying to observe the arising factors of feelings gets a bit more interesting, doesn't it? A bit more interesting. And you can't figure it out with your brain, as you can't understand the feeling by thinking about it, because feeling is not thinking, right? Yeah, so you have to go right to the direct experience of feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, before you can be able to actually understand or observe what the arising factor of it is. So it becomes a different way of seeing, different way of understanding then. It's like when the Buddha talked about knowing or understanding. And there's a whole range of different words the Buddha used. The basic word for knowing is jnana. So there is a sanyana. The sanya jnana is an associated knowledge. This is sort of to do with our experience and our learning, actually. We learn about the names of things. We get that education. And then there's vijnana, which is just it's more like just a knowing that there's something there. Very, very. I translate it as bare knowing, just knowing there's something there. And there's a whole variety of different, clear knowing, clearly knowing. Then there's panya, patjnana, which means knowing in a more advanced degree, panya, more comprehensive or extensive way, seeing the bigger picture, if you like. So sanya just usually has a certain has an object to it, if you like. You're aware, you perceive something, you have a sanya about something, a memory or an idea in your mind. But then panya has to be able to be aware of the sanya. See? You're wise about the sanya, not what the sanya is focusing on, but the whole process of sanya. How you put together, your memory puts together things. And if you're observing how this sanya works, this perception or memory works, you see how limited it is, actually. Just by when we get an education about certain things. I had the good fortune to go traveling when I was younger, a lot younger. And it was a very interesting experience traveling in foreign countries, because I didn't realize how limited my view of the world was, growing up in Canada, for example. When you grow up with what you grow up with, you just assume that is reality. That's how things are done. That's the way things are, you see. Yeah? But then you go to a foreign country, and they do things differently. Like going to England, and they drive on the wrong side of the road, Is it wrong or is it right? Right side, isn't it? No, it's left side. So it is wrong. It is wrong. And it was just that's in Canada that's wrong, you see. But if you persist with my opinion and go to drive in England, then I have an accident, you see. So you have to open to this new way of doing things. Yeah. And I remember traveling around in Europe, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was judging everything through my Canadian glasses, you see. I was seeing everything, and that's not right. Oh, they don't do it right here. We do it differently. We do it a better way. Yeah. And it took me, I would say, at least 6 months before I realized I could take off my Canadian glasses and actually look at the way they do things. Oh, this is how they do it in France. This is how it's done in Italy. Yeah. And actually, it's better. Especially especially the Italian cuisine or the French wine was better than or the English pubs were a lot better than the beer halls in Vancouver. Maybe I shouldn't talk about this stuff. It's too long ago. It's long ago. Before I was a monk. Just to be clear. And then going to especially going to live in Thailand was even more enlightening with a small e, because their whole culture and language is based. It was very edifying in a way for a Buddhist, because the language is based on the Buddhist language, in Pali. So some of the words they used in Thai were much clearer than they were in English. The English you had to translate to you can say the English, Western culture, if you like. So some of the concepts, let's just like impermanence, for example, anicca. Translated into English, it's impermanence. It sounds like some kind of vague philosophy or something, very, very complicated, But in Thai, they just say, mai ne. It's just uncertain, that's all. And it was, when something is impermanent, in English, it appears that there's something is permanent, and then you remove it, you see. It's not permanent. But in the background, there still is the thought it's permanent, but actually it's not. But when you say it's uncertain, if you translate from Thai, mai ne, uncertain, well, that really shakes you up, There's nothing to put your foot on, It's not permanent, and then you remove it. It's just totally uncertain. So you can't even be sure where you're going to put your foot. You might fall through this floor here. It's really uncertain whether this floor will hold up or not. You see. When we say in English impermanent, well, it's permanent, and then okay, it's then maybe in second thought it's not. But actually, the first thought is it is impermanent. And then we try to make it permanent. We try to make it permanent because it's not. So we try to make something, make it something which it's not. And then you suffer. Because we're out of harmony with the way things really are. Things are ultimately impermanent. When we still wish they were permanent, I still think of my hut sometimes that burnt down. Never get over that. If I do, I'll probably know I'm enlightened then. Yeah. Haven't thought of my burnt down hut yet. I'm enlightened then. I really do realize impermanence, but but the Buddha emphasized the importance of as wisdom faculty. In the beginning, it was mainly right view, right aspiration. And the right view, initially, right view, you can say very simply, right view is just acknowledging the principle of cause and effect, especially as it applies to kamma or karma. That skillful actions give pleasant results, unskillful action give unpleasant results. That's a very, very basic, understanding of right view. But then, as I say, the Buddha and also his disciples contemplated the wisdom faculty, the right view. Then there's one of the suttas in middle length discourses where Venerable Sariputta, who was the Buddha's, he was the Buddha's, you can say, right-hand disciple. He was very, very astute or clever, very intelligent. So he came up with, maybe it was first him, with the idea there's two kinds of right view. There's mundane right view, and there's super-mundane right view. You can say the super-mundane right view is the absolute right view, how things really are. The mundane right view is just, there is a principle of causality, cause and effect, results happen from causes, which for some people was already quite a change in their attitude. And even today, I think there are quite a few people still believe when they hear about karma. I just read it in a book recently. The karma is fixed. Karma is your fate. You can't change it. But that's not the Buddhist teaching. That's determinism. Karma is action. And action gives a result. But you can't really say exactly what the result is. There is patterns or principles go through it. As I mentioned, skillful actions give pleasant results. Unskillful actions give unpleasant results. But specifically about them, you can't really say too much. Depends upon the intensity and the intention behind it. Say how committed your intention is. Just the same as with the legal system, with law too. Whether you consciously, intentionally, steal something, or we just kind of casually pick something up and forget to pay for it. So whether it's it's actually formal, or you go into the bank with a gun, and already planned and rob the place. Was it first-degree robbery or something, or? But our intentions are very changeable and have different degrees of intensity to them. So the results are accordingly, they change also. But people find it hard to contemplate these factors. So we like to keep it simple, very, very simple, black and white. So you do bad thing, you get a bad result. Yeah. But the contemplation of that, you contemplate this cause and effect relationships, then it gets more and more subtle. And if you really understand the principle there that the Buddha is trying to point out, that if you believe that you have to reap the result of all of your previous actions, then you're a prisoner. You're a prisoner of your past actions. And as I was just walking here and I was thinking about that, I thought, oh my goodness, if I was a prisoner of all my ignorant actions in the past, I'll never be free. Might as well stop and go home right now, I guess. Give up right away. But the Buddha realized that you could develop. If you act now with wisdom rather than ignorance, it changes the results. It even changes the results of the past actions too. And the main point is to do with the self, you see. If I act, then the act brings me. The result gives me, you see. I act in a way, the act gives me. But if the me changes, the Buddha talked about, you can say, the development of the heart. So a developed mind, which has developed in morality and meditation and wisdom, is a different I. The ignorant I acted yesterday, maybe longer than that, a few weeks ago. But then the I today is different. So the I today that receives the result of that action last week is different, right? I still must reap the result of that action, but it's different now. A different I reaps the result. Yeah. And if that I, that self, is more developed, has more wisdom, so I have less grasping of that result. I have more morality, so I recognize the sense of shame, or I recognize the unskillfulness of that. That I is different. That I is more light, more uplifted. Yeah. So it's not a matter of the action changing so much as the person, the receiving of it. Of course, the classical example is the Angulimala, right? Angulimala, the murderer, who murdered all these people. And you'd think that if somebody had murdered all these people, they would be born automatically and down in deepest hell, you see. But because he was an enlightened being, he gained enlightenment from the Buddha, he still received some result of that actions of killing people. He got injured himself, but it was very, very minor, because the self was not there. The same self was not there to reap the result of it. You can say that self had, as an arahant, had been totally attenuated. There's no self there to receive it. There's still a body that got hurt, but there's nobody there to receive the result of all that bad action, you see. It's the only way you can escape from karma, just to be enlightened. So, it's a little minor point, but so you want to be free of all your bad actions, just be enlightened, that's all. Just follow the Eightfold Path, and there it is, you're out the door. But as the Buddha developed this, his teaching, I would say it actually kind of developed in a way, got more and more refined. The Buddha gained more skill also, teaching people. When he was from teaching a few people, the first 5 disciples, then later he was teaching 1,250 monks. Yeah? So he gained a lot of skill also in teaching, and so he realized what was useful, how to apply it. And then the kind of definition, if you like, of wisdom began to change. For example, I think it's still in the Pali Canon, and they divide wisdom into 3 kinds of wisdom. There's the wisdom that comes from your own thinking, the Chittamaya Panya, and then the Suttamaya Panya from what you've learned. Then there is the Bhavanamaya Panya from meditation, the wisdom from meditation practice. And you think, well, how do these all go together then? Because didn't the Buddha really emphasize meditation? But there's also a number of scriptures where the Buddha talks about, some good qualities to develop are learning, for example, to be quite knowledgeable and learned. Not just meditation, others. Because in a sense, if you don't know what to meditate upon, you haven't got the knowledge of what is the right kind of meditation, then you meditate, but it's going the wrong way. There isn't even mention of wrong meditation. But if you know what the Eightfold Path is, or at least the 3 factors of meditation in the Eightfold Path, right energy, right mindfulness, right collectedness, you put these 3 together, that's right meditation. If you just have one of them, just have collectedness, for example, not right. It's not right yet. It is one factor. It is good practice, but it's not right meditation yet. And then being able to actually put it into practice, what is the right level of right mindfulness, to put it together with the right collectedness, requires experience. And each person is a little bit different. Some people are quite good at samadhi, for example. I gave a talk in Thailand one time, and I just mentioned it. I met in Thailand. I met in the West also. There was one person who came to the monastery regularly, and as a Westerner, they were quite good at samadhi, at collectedness. They come for the evening meditation. They come for the full moon meditation, and they could sit there for 5 hours without moving. I remember he was a Thai man actually, but this Thai man who came sometimes to the monastery in England, and he was a good meditator. He was a painter, an artist actually. So, of course, you need good samadhi to do that, right? Good concentration. So I was sitting in the meditation hall one full moon day, and he came in late from work, you see. And he just came in very quietly and sat down, right in front, and then crossed his legs and looked up at the Buddha statue. And by then it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I was about ready for bed. And he comes in starry-eyed, looking at the Buddha image, and sat there and didn't move for 5 hours. I went out, came back, he's still sitting there. Out again, back again, he's still sitting there. And then in the morning, I met him in the morning, and he said, Ajahn, did you see the golden aura around the Buddha? I said, I didn't notice that at all, no. I wonder he sat there all night under the golden aura of the Buddha, I just saw a bit of darkness, I think. But this one of our disciples, one of the monasteries, she could come to the monastery and sit there in collectedness, for hours, for 5 hours or so on a full moon night. But then when she goes home, her life was really complicated. All kinds of problems. And I mentioned this sometimes. I said to somebody in one talk that there's some people they escape into samadhi. They get very good at it, so they sit there and just bliss out in these peaceful states of mind. But there's no contemplation there. And they just use it to as a kind of a retreat, as it were, a retreat into this very peaceful state of mind. And when they come out, they feel relaxed and they feel relieved, but where's the wisdom? Well, they haven't brought in any kind of contemplation, any right view, any mindfulness maybe, you know. But the Buddha is pointing out that when the mind is just calm enough to contemplate, then you can get some insight into, the nature of your states of mind and your feelings. Just by calming your mind down and going into a very peaceful state or pleasant state of mind, it is helpful, but it's not the end in itself, not the end of the Eightfold Path. It needs to bring in some contemplation too. Begin to observe, the arising and the passing away of these states of mind. Why do they come here? Why these states of mind arise? Why, especially the disturbing ones? To be able to contemplate, especially the arising of unsatisfactoriness or suffering. That's what the Buddha means by about, understanding the Four Noble Truths. To understand unsatisfactoriness or suffering, right down to its very roots. So that means, really to open our mind up to unsatisfactoriness, not just bliss out, escape from it into pleasant states of mind. It can be helpful sometimes, if you need a break. I need a break from suffering, please. But you have to be careful not to get stuck there. Some people can get really, it's one of the stories of some of the forest Ajahns in Thailand. I think it was Ajahn Tate in Sri Chiang Mai. In his biography, he says that he was very good at samadhi, so he could just sit down and go into the non-material absorptions, into the state of nothingness, for example, just bliss out, just like that, And he thought that was what meditation was. That's nibbana, right? You just sit there and bliss out in nibbana, right? No greed, no aversion, no delusion. Wow. I like it. I'm greedy for it. It wasn't until he met Ajahn Mun and explained Ajahn Mun his meditation practice. Ajahn Mun said, don't do that. Don't do that. You're escaping away from suffering into samadhi. It's just an escape. You have to bring I think it was Ajahn Mahabua also that had the same experience. And then when Ajahn Mun told him to, not go into such deep absorption and escape there, he had a really lot of suffering then. And he said something like it was so bad that, he was really angry at Ajahn Mun, for taking away his bliss. But then when he got some insight into the nature of unsatisfactoriness and suffering, he had a great respect for Ajahn Mun. Yeah, that's right. He taught him the right path then, not to just escape from suffering into deep states of calm, but to face it, investigate it, find out what the cause of it is. Only by removing the cause does unsatisfactoriness come to an end completely. Otherwise, we just temporarily escape. The Buddha called states of collectedness, abidings, pleasant abidings, temporary abidings in peace, just temporary. And we can all use a holiday sometime, right? So it's not all bad. But there was a danger that we can get stuck there, we stay there. And then trying to come out of it and investigate unsatisfactoriness can be a real shock. But it's the only way to really get see through it. And that's when there is some degree of collectedness, of course, when we can investigate unsatisfactoriness, it's usually not so sharp, because we still have a bit of calm there. I think many people are afraid to investigate unsatisfactoriness or suffering because they just get caught in the reactive loop, you see. You notice suffering and then it's more frightening, and then frightening into suffering. But if your mind can stay in some degree of calm, then you can look at suffering and it's there's no reaction to it. Your mind is beyond the reactiveness, beyond all the whole reactive syndrome that we built up over the years of ignorance. Then you can see it differently. Oh yes, you can look at it from a calm place then. Very different. Same with the practice of friendliness is similar. When I gave a retreat in Vancouver, somebody asked me about, I said something about friendliness. Friendliness can be very helpful to deal with pain, for example. I said, how do you do that? I said, be friendly to the pain. Said, how do you do that? Friendly to the pain? Absurd. Yeah, pain is my enemy, right? I got to fight it. Said, yeah, but I mean, do you ever win? But if you can be a little bit more kind to it, a bit more friendly to it, you have a different way of kind of encompassing it now, a different way of approaching it. Not so frightening. If you're friendly towards something unpleasant, it doesn't seem to be so overpowering, does it? You can be a bit more friendly. I mean, don't have to love it. You can be a bit more open to it, receptive to it. Yes, there is some fear there is some unpleasantness there. But then you're the connection with the friendliness, which is a more positive state of mind. If you don't have that, you look at the fear and you get pulled into the fear then, because there's no perspective on it. There's no point of reference. Your point of reference is being friendly. Okay, you're not pleasant, you're painful, you're even really, really uncomfortable, but I can be friendly. Be friendly to it. So it's a good space to be in, you see. Or if you change your space and try and be more aggressive to it or angry with it, what happens? It just gets worse, doesn't it? Just the negativity compounds the negativity. But then if you come from a place of positivity, you can look at negativity and a different perspective now. You can look at it at least partly positive, partly with friendliness, partly with calm state of mind, and not the usual reactiveness then. And it shifts your perspective a bit, just a bit in the beginning, when you see how it actually works. It can work that way, and then, you can appreciate it. Oh, this is helpful then, to look at it in a more positive and friendly and calm way then, rather than just compound the negativity or the reactivity to it. But one has to do it first. One has to have the experience of it, because it doesn't make sense, does it? Yeah. These people were really puzzled. Be friendly to the pain? Are you kidding? It's not logical. But try it out. Yeah. So sometimes, it's a matter of, this is now what I would say is the bhavana maya panya. This is the wisdom which comes from meditation practice. If you're just trying to understand it conceptually, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. But if you put it into practice and you develop it for meditation practice, then a different way of understanding now. It does work, even though it doesn't make sense. I can't explain it logically, right? I did explain reasonably logically, right? Positive to the negative. You have a place of positivity. It changes the perspective. But you probably don't believe me, but but till you try it, yeah. But I think as the Buddha developed his own insights and meditation practice deepened, then he had a different way of seeing the faculties of wisdom. Then wisdom operates on many different levels, which first cannot be conceived of, perhaps. Especially the power of meditation. When the mind is calmer, we are a different person. Otherwise, in our normal state of mind, we are usually, yes, I would say we're an emotional reactive syndrome. You see, we just keep reacting in the same way again, the same patterns. That's myself, the same patterns. But if your mind can calm down somewhat, emotions calm down, you don't react in the same way again each time, and you can become a different person. So sometimes maybe the actions we've done in the past have triggered off, say something like fear, for example. And then there's a pattern there we've kind of bought into and reinforced with our sense of self. Now, if you approach that from a different point of view, a different perspective, calmer state of mind, a calm mind looking at the fear is not so fearful. So then it changes. Then the fear is not so frightening anymore. It doesn't go away necessarily, not completely, not 100%, but it's only 80%. Your calmness is 20% maybe in the beginning. And the more you deepen the calm, then that's 50%. And then you can get some perspective on the fear. What's really behind it? It really is this. And most of the time you just see it's just a reactive syndrome. You don't have to keep reinforcing it. You can deactivate it, decondition it. But it takes some effort. You have to go to it each time and recondition it or deactivate it. Just stepping out into calmness or bliss or concentration, collectedness, you come back again and it's still there. You haven't actually deactivated it. You're just taking a holiday from it for a while. Taking a holiday can give you some strength, can give you some confidence, but it's not going to really deactivate it. It's not going to realize the cessation of suffering completely. Temporary respite, that's all. So being able to put all these practices together, the Buddha recognized that the Eightfold Path needs to have some depth to it. So it's a matter of kind of a number of factors coming together, morality, meditation, wisdom, but being able to put them all together then, we have the Buddha gave us the right tools to use, but it's a matter of us putting it together in our particular experience. Each one of us has a different experience of collectedness or mindfulness or even morality. But when we apply it to our own lifestyle, our own particular states of mind, then we get that experience of just, what's the right amount then? And the words become a direct experience and not just concepts in our mind then. So we put it into practice and find out for ourselves, and gradually with that guideline of the teachings, we find our own way of practicing within that and find our way, hopefully, to the further shore. Get to the end of the path then.